Some years ago, I was invited to a lodge in the middle of North Carolina. Having been seated, my neighbor informed me in a low voice that the ritual, like that elsewhere in North Carolina and across the East Coast, was modeled on the form used in England in the early 19th century. But much to my surprise, before the lodge was opened, the master asked the senior warden to order the deacons to take the word from each of those present. And as the deacons walked the lines to receive the whispered password from each attendee, I was thankful that I had visited a lodge in Dublin only a few weeks earlier and knew what was required. But rather than focus on any potential embarrassment on my part, the important point is this. The Masonic ritual was not from 19th century England, but had descended from the Irish and ancients with roots dating back another 60 years to the mid-18th century. The origins of American Freemasonry are truly transatlantic, a mix of predominantly English and Irish influences. And in the same vein, we see the same influences on those who led and established American Freemasonry from the 1730s onwards. Only a few Masonic historians have examined the ties that bind American Freemasonry to England and Ireland, and the mix of personal relationships across the Atlantic that helped to shape it. I've written 4 books on American Freemasonry and the transatlantic influences that help to fill this gap. From Roanoke to Raleigh effectively rewrites the history of North Carolina Freemasonry in a way that has implications for our understanding of American Freemasonry as a whole. Beginning with the colony's early royal governors, the book takes the reader from the first English settlement in North Carolina at Roanoke Island through the development of North Carolina's first Masonic lodges in the mid-18th century to the Declaration of Independence, the formation of the Grand Lodge of North Carolina, and the foundation of the state capital at Raleigh. The book has sought out and examines new evidence, and perhaps most importantly, lays to rest several Masonic myths. Loyalists and malcontents takes a similar approach to South Carolina and Georgia, telling the story of Freemasonry in these colonies from their creation through to the War of Independence and statehood. The book describes how the lodges at Charleston and Savannah had close links to their counterparts in England and explains how the mix of planters, lawyers, politicians, and merchants who comprised Southern Freemasonry were displaced by more radical leaders, both before, during, and after the War of Independence. My latest book, Grand Lodge of England and Colonial America, America's Grand Masters, was written during lockdown and focuses on America's early provincial Grand Masters appointed by the Grand Lodge of England from 1730 through to the 1780s. The book explores the lives and circumstances of these men, looking at how they were appointed or elected, and giving background information on them and on 18th society more broadly. I try to bring together the many different aspects of these men's lives to give a full picture of who they were, their weaknesses and their strengths. The role of slave ownership of most of the past Grand Masters, whether they were Southern or Northern, is part of this picture, as is Prince Hall Freemasonry and African Lodge. With its roots in English, Irish, and ancient Freemasonry, and its many transatlantic ties, American Freemasonry shifted over the 18th century towards greater accessibility and mutuality, laying the foundations for the ritual and practices present in America's lodges today. Thank you.